AI revolution. As we're all fully aware, AI is changing the landscape of every business. But what does that adaptation and change actually look like? And how can we best pivot a business so that it embraces all that this technology has to offer? Well, here to give first-hand experience of just that, please welcome to the stage David Siegel, former Chief Executive Officer at Meetup.
Okay, who here has ever been to a Meetup group or a Meetup event? Raise your hand. Meetup event. Okay, what event have you been to or group?
Sorry.
Loud.
Sorry?
What group? What type of group or event have you been in?
I'm part of an entrepreneur group.
Entrepreneurs. What's another group? What have you been in? Book reading. We read books. That's great. Yes, book clubs. What other Meetup events have people been to over here? Yes, loud. Playing what kind of game? Playing football. Okay, I only know what soccer is, so you have to excuse me. I'm just joking. Okay, so many of you have been to Meetup events and part of Meetup groups, and we had a little thing that happened a few years ago that caused us to seriously have to pivot our business model. Who wants to guess what that was?
AI.
What was it? Something happening in the entire world globally. COVID! Meetup was all about getting together in person. Oh my God, what does a company do when our entire strategy is we use technology to get people off of technology? And then COVID happens. So that's what we're gonna talk about here. But first I'm gonna tell you a story that's gonna surprise you, which is after Meetup was founded, you would think that the type of groups that people would be most interested in joining would be groups around entrepreneurship, like this gentleman over here, or book club groups, like you over here, or football groups that you're in, or tech groups that people are in. But you never know when you start a company what it's gonna happen. So you're never gonna guess what the most common type of group was at Meetup. I will show you right here. The most common type was, who could see it on the top? Witches. There were more groups focused on witches and witchcraft. I don't know how big witchcraft is in Saudi Arabia. Is it big or not so big? Not so big. There are more groups focused on witchcraft than any other topic on Meetup. So talk about having to pivot your business model and change, because when Meetup first started, we first started it, we did not think that witchcraft was going to be where it's at. Now it's not that big anymore. But right after we started it started with that. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Meetup, and then I'm going to share some best practices of what's most important when you need to pivot your business model based on AI. So here we go. Meetup's mission is to end the loneliness epidemic that exists in this world. 46% of people, not sometimes, not occasionally, but regularly feel lonely. And among people who are the youngest people in their 20s, there's much greater levels of loneliness. In fact, the bigger the city that you're in, the greater the loneliness. The smaller the town, the smaller the city you're in, the less. So as Riyadh and as Saudi Arabia continues to grow, it's good. You lose that family feel, you lose that old town feel, and that's a challenge for any economy that continues to grow. Meetup, we have 60 million users worldwide. We're in 10,000 cities, 190 countries. We're in every single country but one country. Who wants to guess what country we are not in? Which one? North Korea is correct. We're actually in Iran, by the way. Yeah. The only country we're not in is North Korea. And I thought I'd share a little bit about Meetup in Saudi Arabia. We have 165 Meetup events every single week. So if you're interested in book clubs or football or entrepreneurship or tech, come to a group. We have almost 200,000 members of Meetup groups. And actually, get ready for this, but Saudi Arabia is one of the fastest growing countries on Meetup, which is really cool. And the reason for that is because so many people are coming in, so many expats are moving in, so many people don't necessarily know people, and it's a great way to meet people and share your common passions. Make sense? So it's one of the fastest growing countries in the world. Now, AI. We have It's pretty crazy. There's over 50,000 different meetup groups in some way related to AI and technology. And what you can see is this is more specific meetup groups, but the growth is actually increasing on a compounding basis. So at one point it was a 9% increase year over year, then 9%, then 14%. This last year was a 26% increase in the number of groups that are exclusively focused on AI, which speaks to obviously the power of what's happening. And in Saudi Arabia, apparently we have 25 different groups right now focused on AI, and a few years ago there was only 2. So it's really interesting seeing the development. As I mentioned, COVID hit. Suddenly every single event in China got canceled overnight. And we're like, oh, it's China, who knows, it's gonna pass. Then Europe and northern Italy, every event got canceled. And we're like, what are we gonna do? Our entire business model is based on one thing, getting together in person. That's it, that was our entire business model. And by the way, at the time we were also owned by WeWork, which was losing about $5 billion a year. So there was a lot of dynamics happening. They were gonna shut Meetup down. After all the kind of good that we've done through the years, they were gonna shut us down because everything was just falling apart. And since that time, we pivoted to allow for virtual events. We now have had over 4 million virtual events on Meetup. Almost every country has hosted a virtual event. And Meetup now is about 80% in person, 20% virtual. So for the last 14 or so minutes, I want to share with you some best practices for changing your business model in light of AI. I'm going to share with you also an amazing data point that happened because of an integration with ChatGPT that completely changed our subscriber and marketing funnel. So I'm looking forward to sharing that too. So first is a famous American. I'm not sure if you would know him or not. He's a famous talk show host. His name is David Letterman, and he always goes through his top 10 list. So I'm going to share with you a top 10 list of best strategies around pivoting your business. So number 1, anyone here follow the NBA and basketball at all? Anyone follow basketball? Great, you follow basketball. What am I doing right now? What's this? What am I doing? I'm pivoting, right? Okay, so a key thing to pivoting is this is not a pivot, right? That's not a pivot. Key thing to pivot is one leg is firmly planted. One leg is moving around. That's what a pivot is. And the reason I say that specifically is because when you're thinking of pivoting your business, it's important not to just jump from one thing completely to another area of business. Our board said to me, David, end in-person events with COVID, only go online for everything. Just an extreme change. One of my biggest best practices is never pivot your mission, never pivot your vision and your values, pivot your strategy, pivot your tactics, pivot your objectives. That's all fine. But your mission, so what happened was, everyone said, our mission is IRL, which means what? What is IRL? Who knows? Anyone? In real life. Thank you, the basketball guy knows. IRL is in real life. Anyone said that? We have turned down literally tens of millions of dollars through the years because what we said is we do not want to have meetup groups that are not in real life. And everyone said, that's our mission. I said, no. Our mission is actually about connecting people. That's our mission. And we're not going to pivot that, we're just going to pivot how we execute against that mission. So as you think about making changes due to AI, don't change your mission, don't change what you stand for, change how you're going to execute against what you're standing for. Number 9. You need to have a culture that supports your mission and pivoting and change. So there's many organizations that are stuck in the old ways of doing things. If you're stuck in one way of doing things, you're obviously going to be dead. So one of the things that we have at Meetup is a set of 6 core values that we do everything around. All of our people are recruited based on our core values. People are promoted based on our 6 core values. Everything surrounds our core values, all performance reviews, everything else. One of our core values, as you can see in the top right over there, is invite change. It's invite change. Originally when we set that up, we were like, accept change. There's a big difference between accepting change as a company core value and inviting change. And at Meetup, we've always embraced change, and we've said that's the way that we can make change happen. So item number one is never pivot your mission. Item number two is make sure your culture of your organization deeply supports the need to pivot a business and not just get stuck in what it used to be. Next one, number 8, data. Very important to leverage data as a part of your pivoting decision making. So this is kind of a really cool data point, which is what we did is we created heat maps, and we looked at which countries are increasing the percentage of in-person events, right? Because COVID restrictions were getting less, and which countries were actually getting more restrictive. And we did heat maps throughout the world and looked at all these different changes, and that helped us develop our strategy. So we would go and we'd see Singapore. Things are changing in Singapore. And we sent an email out to every organizer and every member in Singapore, time to get back to in-person. And then we saw in another country, Argentina, things are closing up. And we sent notes to the individuals in that country saying, time to actually have more online events rather than in-person events because things are changing there. So we leveraged data as part of our pivoting strategy and understood we need to make a very different approach depending on what the situation happens to be everywhere. So leveraging data is number 3. So we said, never pivot your mission, number 1, or number 10. Number 9 was all about building a culture, and number 8 is leveraging data for around your mission. Number 7 is supporting your mission, supporting your pivot to AI or whatever pivot you need with the right advertising and marketing strategy. So let me explain that. In 2018, the number 1 most common type of group was in tech, business, entrepreneurship. Number 2 was in hiking, running, outdoor stuff. Number 3, like football we mentioned before. Number 3 was actually book clubs. Those are the top 3. That was 2018. 2019, exact same 3. 2017, exact same 3. 2020, same 3 until COVID hit, and it completely changed. The number 1 priority went from number 20 to number 1 and went double more than anything else, which is finding adult friends. Finding friends as an adult. People just felt like they were lonely. People felt like they were more by themselves. So what did we do at Meetup? In order to support our pivot, we completely changed our advertising strategy. All of our advertising was around tech, or was around hiking, or was around specific things. We changed everything so that it would all be focused on finding friends, meeting the right people to connect with, and that became the entire focus of our business. Next, the next thing that we did is we needed to really educate people as part of our pivot, because like many organizations, we're a very complex company. What do I mean? We have people who organize groups, we have people who attend groups, we have people who sponsor different groups, we have large enterprise clients like IBM and Microsoft who run many, many groups around the world. We have like a 5-sided marketplace in our business. And people were confused. They said, I have a running group. How do you do a running group online? Like, how does that work? What do you do there? What are the best practices around that? So we actually got the head of Zoom, and we created something called Meetup Live, where we shared the best practices for running any kind of group online when it used to be done in person. And you know what they said? They said, have everyone run around, and then get back on Zoom, and then have a beer together. And that's the way you could continue your community. And we taught people how to use breakout groups effectively, how to have different scavenger hunts on Meetup. We basically completely changed the entire educational and content process. We started a podcast called Keep Connected of our company that we've been doing for about 20 years in order to support the pivot. Because we have so many different constituencies, we needed to really educate our organizers and not just assume that they knew what they were doing. So another key element in pivoting your business model is make sure you have the right content strategy, the right educational strategy, and then the right community strategy. Let me tell you about an educational thing that we did that was a game changer. It literally almost doubled our revenue for a period of time, which is kind of insane for a company around for 20 years. When someone creates their first Meetup group, do we have actually any Meetup organizers? Someone actually was an organizer of a group here? Yeah, you're a meetup organizer? I love it. Oh, yeah. Woo! Okay, what are you a meetup organizer of? Women in tech. In where? What city? In Russia and Moscow. Amazing, beautiful. Хорошо. So when you're a meetup organizer, one of the most daunting tasks to do, one of the most scariest things is to write the description of your group. Because everyone is going to see that group description and they're going to be like, does this work for me? Does this not work for me? Is this a group that I want to go to? Is this a group I don't want to go to? It's very stress-filled. And we had 2/3 of people, when they got to the point where they had to write their group description, they dropped out. 2/3 of people dropped out because they were so stressed about writing their group description. And then put a simple, generated description with the AI, as you can see on the bottom. We integrated with ChatGPT. We had tons of call outs to people. Amazingly, with this feature, close to 60% of people used it. And when people use a feature, the drop-off rate, which amazingly went from a 67% drop-off rate to only a 20% drop-off rate. Pretty amazing. That's one of many different examples of how we use AI. We also use AI for customer service, for a whole bunch of other ways in which we're using AI for our business. But that's one example that had a profound impact on kind of the success of our business. Getting back to supporting pivots. We have 4 items left. Number 4 way to support a pivot is with community. Creating a community around your business. Creating a group of people who each person can help one another out, who could share best practices, who could say, oh, I went through this in the past and now I'm going to this. That's exactly what DeepFest is trying to do. It's trying to build a community of people to really learn from each other. And when you have community, honestly, it's really the psychological and emotional needs of community that's more important than just pure practical best practices. Raise your hand if you're in some kind of community related to AI. Okay, not enough of you are raising your hands. It's so important to be able to be in a community related to AI and to understand what kind of changes need to be made. And again, those people like yourself that's in a community know that you being there to emotionally support each other and psychologically support each other is a greater role of community than anything else you could do. So we created a Discord community. We actually got a number, it was originally 15, it's now up to over 100, 200 meetup organizers from around the world to be there for each other and to help each other out and to support each other when a business model is massively pivoting. So again, this is just another example of surrounding your change. You can't just make the change in strategy. It's surrounding it with culture, surrounding it with content, surrounding it with education, surrounding it with advertising, surrounding it with your community strategy. All of those things are critical when you're pivoting a business model. Number 3, we obviously changed a lot of things about our actual product experience. We integrated with people, whether it was, to be able to say, are masks allowed, are masks required, are masks permitted. We made a number of changes there. We also set it up so people do hybrid events. The fastest growing type of events happening on Meetup today. Fastest country, one of the fastest countries, Saudi Arabia. Fastest type of event is hybrid events, which is essentially an event where many people are in person and there are also people that are online. And we enable the ability for people to have hybrid events a lot more effectively, and a lot of people are taking advantage of it, and I encourage you to do so as well. Last 2 is when you're pivoting, a lot of time you're drowning. You can't think about the long term. You can't think about the future. All you're doing is you're making sure that things don't fall apart where they are right now. But what we decided to do is we said we need to allocate at least 20-30% of our budget and our time away from short term to building long-term priorities for our company. So we doubled down on building a group tipping feature, on an improved chat feature, a whole bunch of different features. But I think my main message here is when you're pivoting, make sure you're also planning for the long term and not just thinking about the short term. And last but not least, through our pivot, we ended up creating a new revenue model. There's a famous saying, I don't know if it's said in Saudi Arabia or in Europe, which the saying is, never fail to take advantage of a crisis. When there's a crisis, like COVID was a crisis for so many of our businesses, find a way to use that crisis to help to build your business. And I think it's true in many different countries, whether it's in the Middle East or Russia, whether there's crises that are happening around the world. How can we take this crisis and find a way to make the world a better place? And we did that when we created a new model called Meetup Plus. This is a list of the top 10 best practices around pivoting your business model. Your mission is forever, don't pivot that. Make sure you have the right culture. Make sure you're leveraging data as part of your pivot. Make sure you're using the right advertising strategy, content, education, community, product changes, future investments, and future channels. If anyone wants to reach me, the best way is actually, I didn't put this up, is through LinkedIn. Feel free to send me a LinkedIn invite, and I will definitely accept, because I know from you. I happen to have written a book, it's called Decide and Conquer, all about community, the importance of community, the impact of community. I brought just 5 copies because it was hard to get there here from New York to Riyadh. If someone wants a copy, then I'll kind of stand outside of the doorway if you want to get a copy of it. I'm happy to give it to you at my cost. And time is up right now. I hope that this rest of this conference is going to be extremely valuable for you. And remember, as you pivot, keep in mind each of the different elements that are on here. Thank you all so much. Take care.